Hey guys, sorry about that. My recording just cut off a little bit. Um, but what I was saying, I think it was the Legacy of the Black Dogs. I'm pretty sure it's called the Legacy of the Black Dogs. I would have to take a look at it um again, but I do apologize. My recording cut off for some reason. Um, so if you watch till the end of the first part and it cuts off, that's probably why. Um, Again, I do apologize about that. But back what I was saying is before, I think it is called The Legacy of the Black Dogs, and if you play through the campaign of the Black Dog side, you will actually see that there is a mission that's basically similar to the end of the Russian mission, and I think it's called Hounds of War. Um, it's one of the best missions ever. But if you play the Hounds of War mission first, you will actually kind of fully understand the the story, because this I think takes I don't I want to say it before the Three Beacons. No, I think it's after. I'm pretty sure it's after. But I will have to play the mission again because I haven't played the Hounds of War for the Legacy of the Black Dogs in a while. But I think it could be after. But if you play that mission first, then you will actually hear the dialogue, oh hey, like, the Furies have turned on us. The same thing what the Russian Furies did with the against the Soviets. And knowing them, uh, basically they all were slaughtered, and most of them were actually killed by a swarm of Furies. So after that, the that's when the NSDF mission um comes into knowing the three beacons, and that's where it steps in. And so I'm pretty sure that the Hounds of War is after. I think it's either. I'm pretty sure it's after, but I could be wrong about that. Um, for the Hounds of War of the Legacy of the Black Dogs, but anyways, um, if I am getting that right, please let me know. I always could say that it's probably after, but it's sometimes before the mission itself. But I'm pretty sure I'm taking a guess it's after. When you finish that, then it starts to come to the three beacons. Um, but after that, it actually tells you now that the NSCF has already got the three distress signals. Collins actually sends his forces to Titan, and then you start as the NSDF, knowing that the Black Dogs were in serious trouble. They basically found out that the Soviets were managing the Soviet Furies that they remade from the first Furies creators, which was known as the Haydens. Um, After that, they decide to send forces, and then what happened was the Soviet Furies started to get malfunction. Everyone says that the Furies themselves were a little bit bugged, um, and I don't think it's because they were bugged. I learned and I read information about this. So basically, how the Fury actually works is that when they're basically, you know, when they're basically around with their allies, the alien craft themselves, the Fury would actually start destroying all the enemies. But when there's no enemies left to kill, the Furies will start to act more aggressively. Then they will start to get malfunction and turning on their own creators. That's how the Fury actually works. The Fury would actually be more aggressive because they don't have any other like enemies to kill. But when they turn rogue, that's where they start to turning on their own creators, and there's a lot of enemies for them to destroy. So they start to turn on their own creators. That's why during the Hayden side, they used to create Fury units, and the Furies didn't have nothing to kill at all, so they had to turn on their own creators to slaughter all Fury. I was about to say Fury. They to slaughter all Haydens, just like how the Furies did with the Soviets. You know, that's is the exact same way they did that. Um, for both sides. How the story, and the NSDF mission, where you played that mission where it talks about you have to collect 75 pieces of scrap. On that, after you beat that, it talks about a story of a boy who made wings out of wax and flew too close to the sun, and his wings melted, and he plummeted to his death. It's a story of saying, how the Black Dogs, during the legacy of the Black Dogs, they were so focused on power and focused to winning the war against the Soviets, they weren't really knowing what the consequences behind their actions and what they were about to unleash. And when they figured out that the Furies were actually a problem, they started to unleash them. And then the Furies started to kill everyone. The Furies were programmed in their side to kill people, but what the dialogue, what it actually said before was the Furies were actually meant to prevent the war from happening, to actually prevent the United States and Soviet from actually fighting against each other. But the United States and Soviets had to ally because they knew that the Furies were actually a threat. So they had to ally with each other to stop the new threat, which was the Furies themselves. And that's where, the strike at the heart comes in, where the Furies have their own facility with all Soviet buildings and stuff like that. Because the Soviets buildings were captured by Fury warships and tanks and stuff. But also you got to remember what it says right here. The Furies were actually a race of sentient biometal craft. They're sentient fighters. They're biometal wars, faction Furies. This talked about just the information right here, like what's the faction and era. But it says here the Furies were actually sentient biometal, originally created by the Hayden's Crown. So that's what I was telling you. The original creator, the first creators, the one who ever developed the first Fury project was known as the Haydens. The Haydens, and of course you know that the Haydens was in Battlezone 2. Those are actually the Haydens themselves. That they were the first ones to develop the Fury technology. But what happened was later was replicated by the CCA because they wanted to remake the model themselves by their own Soviet technology and alien technology that the Haydens of their war machines and went rogue. Because sentient, you got to remember, sentient is actually very a way kind of a scary thing. It's like another version of AI self-aware, and that's what the Furies are. They're considered as AI, so they think for themselves. They're more highly intelligent. They also say that the Furies can take non-control over non-vehicle structures, like how the Furies took over one of the Soviet gun towers at Strike at the Heart, and you can tell that they took over a hangar too, which was one of their facilities. Um, it also does talk about that the reason why the Furies are so fast is because they were created from strain 3 biometal. That's why they're so highly fast and they move a lot more faster in the air. Those like flying UFOs that like hop around and land, those are the Fury Flyers. The Fury Flyers were actually the Strain 3 biometal. The Fury tanks are not as strong, but they do hit a lot harder. The Fury the Furies are more frustrating. That's why they're called Furies for a reason. It's another saying of frustrating, furious, you know. And also, it does talk about the Olympus Council. And I will probably talk about that probably in my other Battlezone discussions. Um, too. I won't talk about the Olympians councils. I'm just gonna click on this and what it talks about here. Um, what it talks about here. But yeah, so this is just a small paragraph. I don't think there is. Yeah, there's not a whole lot about it. But I'll probably talk a little bit about the Olympus Council maybe in my next video. If probably not, or it could be a little bit more of Strain 3, and I'll probably discuss that maybe in my other video too. But anyways, after that, after you finish up the mission Titan, then the Furies actually go to a small moon called Achilles, which is the Furies' main HQ, which is their main home. And you see it after that the Americans are known as the NSDF, had to take down their power sources and destroy their power plants to disable the bolt mines. But what happened was the Furies were trying to hold off the Americans. And the reason why I say that the Furies are not really considered as the bad guys, only because the Furies were actually always been the good guys all this time throughout, Battlezone. And they wanted to prevent the war. They wanted to prevent the war from ever happening and never wanted the NSDF and Soviets to continue fighting anymore. They wanted to stop the war completely. But the Americans never wanted that. They wanted to still fight against the Russians because to be honest with you, the Russians never really seen eye with the United States in real life. That's why the Russians always hated the United States. That's why the NSDF and Soviets had to keep fighting. And so the Black Dogs, I don't know. It was the mission for the Legacy of the Black Dog mission. It was kind of sad too to hear that, but like I said, it was very dumb for what the Black Dogs did for creating that technology and focusing on too much power. But you also got to remember it was never really about power. It was more of trying to focus on protecting the people you care about and making friends, because more power like that is not going to get you anywhere. You're basically using your power to hurt yourself inside and to damage you even more. thinking that you're basically invincible, but you're really not. So that's why it was never really about power at all. That's a good reason why people, should understand about that. But like the Furies, like I was saying, they never really wanted. They were never really the bad guys. They always wanted to protect their territory. They always wanted to have their own home, but the NSDF doesn't give them that chance only because the NSDF was always so rude and nasty towards the Furies because they knew that the Furies were the bad guys. They knew that they were causing issues to prevent the Furies wanted to reach Earth, but the United States, known as NSDF, tried to prevent that from happening. So, but the Furies only wanted for what's right for their sides. The Furies only cared about one thing, was to protect their own home, which was Achilles. And Achilles was always been their home. It was their main territory that they always wanted to protect. But the United States took that away from them. And when the Furies' main home was about to start blowing up, they were trying to escape from their own home. And the NSDF shot down their main launch pad, which is that giant Fury launch pad that you see near the end of the NSDF campaign. And after that, the Furies launch pad has been taken down. Some of the Furies have escaped, and most of the Furies that was on Achilles completely died, and the Americans escaped from Achilles. And so, where does the Furies go? Well, there is one possibility that the Furies may have found a new planet that they set up as their new home. Um, but at the same time, nobody knows where the Furies have gone. But I'm taking a guess that they maybe have found an alien planet that where they could set up their main bases. That's where more of the Furies went because of what happened to their home Achilles. So the Furies were basically space warships that were homeless and they didn't have anywhere to go. So they had to set up a different side of their main base somewhere else. They could have set up on maybe Europa, but it's possibly that they set up their main base on an alien planet itself. So that's one way I can look at it. But to be honest with you, I don't think the Furies were the bad guys. I feel like that the Furies were actually treated wrong, and the Furies feel like they were being used as a tool. That's why the Furies had to turn rogue for a reason. That's why the Furies had to do what they had to do to survive. It was about survival for the Furies, for them, because they didn't like being treated as a tool. They liked to be free. They wanted to be having their own space. That was what Battlezone, that's what the creators of Battlezone wanted, is to add Furies in there, but Activision doesn't know what the actual story behind the Furies storyline is. It's very sad. It's actually true. The Furies always wanted to have their own freedom, but the Americans took that away from them. The Furies were left homeless because their main HQ, their main home, Achilles, was gone. Their planet well, it's more like a moon, like kind of like Endor, but I'm just gonna call Achilles a planet because I always keep calling it that. I don't know why. Um, but the Furies were left homeless. They didn't have nowhere to go, so they had to set up their base somewhere else. The Furies didn't get enough freedom because people treat them like monsters. But you gotta remember, the Furies were sentient. They had their own feelings and thoughts. They didn't like to being controlled by other people, and they feel like that they were treated like monsters so much that that's why the Furies had to turn rogue. That's why they were so aggressive against the others, because the Soviets, that you got to remember, during the time back years ago, the Soviets were communists, but they were also wanted slavery, and people never wanted that because they didn't like being controlled. It's kind of same how, the Furies were when the Soviets created them. They hated being controlled. The same thing with the Haydens. When the Haydens created their own Fury technology, the first creators creating their first alien Fury technology, they never wanted to be controlled because they hated being controlled. They never wanted that. So that's why the Furies turned against their own creators, and that's why they turned out to be what they are today in the Battlezone universe. That's why Furies are so aggressively violent. That's what the people don't know about that. Sure, the Furies were created by the same creators, the Hayden's Crown. They have genders. Okay, so they may have genders, but that's like they're like the alien Furies are like the female versions, and then the Soviet ones are the male versions. There's no there's no male or female versions. They're both warships. They both have feelings. They both have their own thoughts. They're like humans. They just don't like being treated like monsters. You see how it actually fits in, guys. The Furies always was the good guys all this time throughout the Battlezone story. They just been treated like tools by their own creators. Like the Haydens were treating them like garbage. The Soviets were treating them like slaves, and they didn't like that. That's how the Furies turned out to be. So, anyways, guys, I am hope that you enjoyed this little bit of my thoughts about the Furies. Um, I hope you like that this theory that I have. If you have any questions about it or what you think about the Furies, please leave a comment down below, and I'll try to do more theories about Battlezone itself. But that's what my theories are. That's what I think that's how the Furies turned out to be. Seeing the Furies like that, I do feel bad for the Furies, and that's just how the Furies were turned out to be. That's how they were made, and that's how they were so aggressive, because they were never wanted to be treated like that. They have their own feelings. As AI self-aware or sentient, you know, they have their own intelligence and very taking over control non-structured units. They may not do the good things, but it still doesn't mean that they still have their own feelings about people treating them like that. But anyways, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'll talk to you more Battlezone theories of what I think it happens for my next theories on the Battlezone Wikipedia. I'll describe it as much as I can. If you have any questions, like I said before, please leave a comment and I'll read them. And I'll talk to you guys next time. Farewell and take care of my comrades.